All right. Welcome to the podcast, Sheila. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an awesome topic we've chosen to talk about.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'll clue everyone in on what that is in a moment here. I've actually had a lot of pre-conversation conversation with Sheila. And to fill in some of the gaps, I actually discovered Sheila via TikTok. The algorithm started recommending. Actually, you know what it was? Someone reposted one of your videos, and it had to do with ascension symptoms. And when I watched it, I was just like, it's like this person is me. And so that's what it was. Someone reposted, and that's how you showed up on my radar. And then I followed you. More, videos started showing up, and I was just like, man, this person is on the path. They're very advanced. They definitely know their stuff. And so then I messaged you and said hello. And then eventually I was just like, hey, might you want to talk about being a guest? Because um again, I've been on the path for a while, so I feel I know when someone knows their stuff, and that's how I felt about you since day one. So here we are, and that's a bit of the backstory for the viewers and the listeners. And now I'll just throw it over to you. Feel free to let us know a little bit about you, how you like to be of service, just anything you're excited to share in this moment.
So I was dead asleep up until about 2012. So I'm one of the 2012 crew. And then my entire life exploded and imploded, and my father died, my mother died, my marriage ended, and like rock bottom, I found out it had a basement. So that was sort of the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And it actually took a couple of years of cleaning up my body and clearing all of, well, not all of, but the initial portion of all of the grief and sort of the emotional stuff before I actually embarked on any kind of a spiritual journey whatsoever. And from about, I would say maybe 2015 onward, it's just been like shot out of a cannon. So how am I of service? What am I doing? I'm really just sharing my journey. That's all I've ever really done. I started out being a coach once I had sort of healed or perceived that I had healed enough of myself from the catastrophe that had been my life, blowing up. And I started sharing that. And I was sharing it from the perspective of that there was a lot of women in particular who I felt had lost themselves in perhaps being the good daughter or whatever role they had played in their family, but also then into their marriage, that they lose themselves into being a wife and a mother, and then it just all kind of falls apart from there. And because I had then, as a single person, had to sort of heal and look at all my parts and pieces, I was sharing that part of my journey. But then it just never stopped, because the more into the spiritual realm I delved into, the more parts of myself I got to know and understand, and healing and energy and all of that stuff. So I'm a star seed, a light worker, a twin flame, a way shower, like all the labels. I wear all of them and really don't attach to any of them in particular. I'm really just sharing my journey. I've been doing one-on-one sessions with people for 7 years now, maybe. I don't know. That was just, that word came out of my mouth. So we'll go with 7. I didn't do the math to figure that out. I have a Patreon group, Facebook. I do TikTok videos when inspired. What I'm really understanding right now at this point in my journey is that my journey has to come first. And that's also a big part of the way shower light worker role. So I do have a number of platforms and a number of ways that I do assist and that I meet with people. But it is really only when I'm in a place to be able to offer that as the container and from a place of wisdom and clarity. So it's been an interesting ride.
Well, it sounds like you're really following the teaching, I'll call it, the teaching that is, let your own cup be filled first. It's like you're not trying to pour from a cup that's just like a quarter a quarter of the way full, which is good. It's good. Yeah, like that recipe never worked for me, I feel, based on how everyone talks about that metaphor, I guess, if you will. It's like a lot of other people have probably seen that's not really a great recipe to try and pull from, a cup that's not feeling, full and well nourished. So good for you for doing that. I love that. And then real quickly, I'll just mention that I didn't know this detail until you just shared it, but essentially, like, that's when you said 2012, I did the math, and when my life at that time began to crumble too. And I started to ask big questions. It was when I was 28, and as I was approaching 30, I just was so unhappy with life, and I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I can't let my 30s be like my 20s. So that's when everything began to fall apart. And then I actually left that life behind at 30 in 2014. So I was like, man, that explains so much, because it's like you and I are on the same wave. So
There was a big wave of us star seeds, if you resonate with that label, that went through the awakening in 2012. As the way I see it is more like a soul merge. Like the star seed aspect of us walked in, but we didn't necessarily walk out. So it was more like a merging, a shifting of our codes, whatever language you want to put on it. There was a big populace of sort of the star seeds that became more activated in their coding around that time, so that we would be in this position now. Like we had 10 years to grind out all of our stuff so that we could really hold the codes or whatever for where we're at right now.
It makes a lot of sense, because you too. And it makes a lot of sense, because here we are talking about it all. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. It's like, I'm like, man, that makes so much sense. Again, the resonance when I saw you on TikTok, because now I know, I'm like, oh, we're on the same wave. So yeah, that explains a lot. And so I'll just move it over to the conversation that we wanted to have today. And at least the launching off point was just about, the way I'll frame it is just the return to the the inner child essence, that pureness, that wholeness, that innocence. To me, another way I'll frame it is like, it's the part of us that just knows that we're just designed to be held, like, in this existence, knowing and feeling that we're held so that we can create, we can play, we can explore, we can really express the divinity that comes into this human vehicle. And then we can, the way it once came through for me was that the human vessel is a bridge, because in truth we are non-physical. And to me, that's what we sense when we sense into our feelings, thoughts, ideas. It's non-physical. But then when we use our human body to express it, so for instance, when we sing a song, now we have brought that inspiration from the non-physical into the physical, because our voice is amazing. Our voice is speaking of my voice.
Speaking of.
And so I'll just backtrack a little bit so I can edit that part. And so we are using non-physical inspiration, and then using our vocal cords to in our human vessel to bring that into a physical expression in the physical universe. So it's like we sense everything in the invisible realm, and then we make a choice if we're going to, whether it's an idea that we put on paper. So like architects thinking about a house, that's non-physical until they put it on the paper. A poem, a TikTok video, it's like everything starts in non-physical, and then our human vessel is a channel to, if we so choose, move it into a physical expression. And to me, again, returning to that innocence, that wholeness. It's like that's where the way I can best describe it is like we really feel safe within existence again, and safe within a physical existence, so that we can really let all the light and the divine expression through whatever wants to come through into the physical world. That's how it kind of lands for me. And so we had said that we really at least wanted to launch off on a process that many of us may be in, where we're being invited to return to that. And of course, it sounds wonderful. It actually feels really good. And then again, if you ask me, there can be a lot that's consciously asked of us to let go of so that we can return to that state. How do you feel about everything I just said?
I totally agree. It's the ascended human is I see it as a combination of the purity and innocence of the child, that is the God spark, and married with the wisdom of all of your soul fractal lifetimes. So it is that you are wondrous and childlike and creative, but you also have the wisdom and responsibility piece of the divinity that's married back together. I think maybe I could set, just for clarity, for foundation as we carry on in this conversation, that the way that I sort of talk about the inner child in that aspect is that when your soul decided to come here and it ticked all the boxes, I'm going to be a boy or a girl, or I'm going to live here, I'm going to have this colored skin, and you hired all the actors that were going to be a part of your play. When you first come into the human body from, say, 0 to about 5 years old, you are your divinity in human form, living as consciousness first and human second. So you're the God spark in your own soul template as the child. But at around 5 years old, and this is like a neurological event, children begin to be aware that there's actually an outside reality that needs to take precedent in order to feel safe, loved, and validated. So they begin to measure their safety, their love, and their validation based on, who do I need to be around mom in order to feel safe, loved, and validated? Who do I need to be around dad? And then they start going to school, and then there's peers and teachers. And, as you get older, we add in coaches and bosses and partners and girlfriends and boyfriends and all of that kind of stuff. And that's where the creation of the ego comes in. That's where the personality and identity is being created. It starts at around 5 years old. It's also the second sort of, depending on how you look at it, first or second abandonment wound. So we abandon ourselves from source by becoming an ego, but we also sort of abandon ourself, because that divine aspect as the child that is your divinity is abandoned because you go off and become the adult. You go adulting into your ego personality and identity. So that's what precipitates the sort of requirement through the ascension, process, that we come back and reunite, reunify, reparent, and reconnect with our inner child aspect. Because the child is actually a fractal waiting outside of you for you to create an environment within your structure, within your body, within your personality, within your choices, decisions, reactions, responses, that makes the child feel safe to come back home. Mm-hmm. So I'll pause there. The more we can talk about, but I'll bring you back in.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the way you speak about it. That's the second time I've heard you talk about it like that, and I love that context. And it just makes a lot of sense too, because if I even reflect on my life experience, it's like, yeah, it's like there is a certain point where just perceiving, like other people, because when you're really young, and I observe this, and nieces and nephews that I have, like when they're really young, there's like really not much of a care in the world unless there's like a big dog kind of like barking in your face, then, there's a bit of a fright. But other than that, it's like, it's just all good, and it's play, it's fun, it's exploration. But you can kind of see like when, as you talked about, like the mind starts to come in and starts to make judgments, and you can just kind of tell there's more cautiousness, and there's more mental processing. Like, is it okay for me just to walk into a room and sing at the top of my lungs? Like, you often see it start to display as shyness, whereas at 2 it might have been no problem, just like, pick up a toy guitar and like sing. Whereas at like 6 it might be like, you know, people might say, sing for us. And it's like, I'm shy. It's like, you can, there's a difference in perception. And as I think about it, for me, at least that's what I've noticed in my observation. And when I think about it for me, it's like, yeah, it's like there's a certain point where there is more of like a mental processing of, I need to be seen in a certain way, or is it okay for me to express like that? Will I be accepted? Um, will I be understood? Will I lose love? That was a huge one for me. That was one of my core fears, was that I didn't feel safe to express in a lot of ways, because the fear was I'll lose love because I'll be rejected. And so definitely, definitely is a shift. And last thing I'll say before I throw it back over to you is that I once, it was something like a study or something I probably saw on YouTube or in a TED talk. Um, and it was saying that it was a study, so of course it's not an umbrella for all of existence, but it was a study that showed some interesting, findings. And it was that boys observed to a certain age, they relatively, what was noticed, that they kind of are a lot like girls until about the age of 6. And then at 6, like they start really differentiating, because maybe that's when they start to really pay attention to what the shoulds are, what the shoulds are. And then it also said by age 11, boys are pretty much shut down emotionally, just like completely, withdrawn, shut down, closed off, not feeling safe to express emotion. And so, yeah, I feel all that to say, I feel like what you're talking about is, from everything I've taken in, it feels very legit to me.
And how sad is that, right? Like that the the loss of ability to fully express oneself is taken away at such a young age. But at the same time, all the levels and layers, it's the game we came here to play. We came here to experience this with the actors that we hired to experience it with. But children are born into this paradigm and then raised by people that are already in a very clearly structured egoic personality, right? So whatever programming went into you as a child that said it's safe for you to sing, it's not safe, it's safe for you to express, it's not safe, is a product of typically your parents, who are also operating from their most wounded space, because they have their ego programming that's running at full tilt. So this is part of what we're all doing by undoing all of this programming and really looking at what's driving our behaviors, so that we can dissolve this programming and be better friends, better partners, better parents. Like in my childhood, the family that I hired for myself, both of my parents came from wounded childhood experiences, alcoholism and abuse and stuff like that, in both sides. And then they came together, and that played out in various ways that just really made me feel not safe. Like it's no wonder that inner child stuff is sort of a specialty of mine, because the amount of inner child work I've had to do and unpack and figure out and explore has been incredible. But so it, like in my case, what the program was that I took on was the people pleasing programming, right? Like it's, I was the older sibling, I was firstborn, I was the girl, And my mom was very volatile. What I understand now, to put a label to it, is it was that narcissist empath dynamic, which lots and lots of people have. And, we ordered that to ensure that we would do our work once we got here. But my experience was that if I was just like so good, if I was just like a perfect student and a perfect daughter, and I looked perfect and I behaved perfect and I did all of the things that were perfect, I would somehow buy my mother's safety, love, validation. She would like me, and then I could breathe. And, so that unfolded in so many different ways in my life. And everybody, you have a story, I have a story. This is what we came here to break down.
I'm just like smiling and kind of silently giggling over here because the more you talk about yourself, it's like you're talking about me. Because my, I talk about it a lot, that my inner child's survival strategy, like you said, for the approval, feeling like it could secure love, was perfection as well. It's like, let me just be perfect at everything, and then I'll feel like I'm secure, and like I'm gonna get that love, that approval that I want. So yeah, that's a real one. Man, so interesting. So for yourself, because we've kind of laid out some of the context and a little bit about where we see this heading. So what has been, I'll just go to right now, like what is, just with this process, kind of having a sense of where it's all going, what are some of the things that you do right now? Is because we're in the midst of the undoing, all in our own way, but you're in your undoing, I'm in mine. So when some of the things, some of the programs come up that you adopted, they're still coming up now. I would imagine they're probably some of the core ones. How do you take care of yourself in the midst of that, in the midst of the undoing?
My journey with bringing my inner child back home to my sacred heart, which is sort of how I contextualize the journey. It's played out in a million different ways over the years. Of course, losing both of my parents, and then my husband, he didn't pass, we got separated. That was a big undoing of, like, an eruption of, oh my God, I'm alone in this world. And like all of the things that come with that. And then being a single parent, and my parenting wasn't great then, and it wasn't conscious. And I really was this child parenting her children in a way that looked to the world like I was doing a good job, but I wasn't. And I mean, my kids are 23 and 21 now. We have amazing relationships. They're also on the path. We've done a lot of healing together, but it's just really about the more room you make within yourself, within your mind space, within your body, within your schedule, whatever places that you can find to make room, the more room you make, the more you are able to self-observe. And the observation sometimes brings up judgment, which is another program we have to dissolve. But it was just about, paying attention to, why did I act that way? Why did that trigger me so much? Why am I so angry about this thing that my son did, or whatever? And really going all the way to the root, and like, but why? But why is that? But why? But why? But why? Until you get to the core. And sometimes it takes multiple times of the same thing to play out for you to get to the core. Like, it's just part of the process. So, my approach has changed a lot over the years. I had, letter writing and meditations and sacred altars. And like, I played in all the branches of the tree and tried and done all of the things. And I remember, and I think it might have been sort of my last step. I remember sitting watching TV one night, And it wasn't long ago, like maybe 2 years ago. And sort of in my third eye comes into the room is my inner child. And I muted the TV and I just sat there and cried and thought to myself, I just can't with you right now. I just can't. Like if I can see you, you're clearly not as integrated back into me as I think you are. And like I just don't know what to do anymore. I've done all the journaling and meditating and letter writing and sacred care of myself. And I've watched my parenting because I know that's the trigger that makes this all play out the loudest. Like, oh my gosh. And as I sort of just sat in that space of, I love you and I want this for us to reunite and to do this journey together, but I don't have the answers anymore. I don't have the fix. I don't know what you need from me, but I love you and I'm here. And it still brings up the emotion. And I really think, and I teach this with my clients, that that's what they're looking for. If we can sort of personify them outside of us, that is what the inner child is looking for. They're looking for your heart to break open with so much compassion for the journey that you've had and make yourself a space that they want to come home to, not to be fixed, not to be judged, not to be crystalled or essential oiled or meditated or altered. They don't want that. They want to be accepted in the brokenness, the frailness, the programming, the woundings, the traumas, all the things, to just know that you are a safe place, that they can trust you and that you trust you, and that this is something you're going to do together. And then from there, I just let her talk to me. I use her as my coach. I look up to my inner child as my truth. Mm-hmm. So if I'm feeling wobbly or wonky or angry or whatever, I just hold my heart and I connect with her and I say, what do we need today? And maybe it's more creative time. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's a nap. Maybe it's order takeout and watch crap on TV. Like it can be anything, but I listen to her. And that has been the most profound shift.
Yeah. Just absorbing that for a moment here. Because I've definitely, again, can relate to that in my own way. And yeah, that's what I feel has been happening with me in a big way. I mean, like you said, it's, it's layers upon layers, but that's what I've been experiencing for me as of late is like, the way I'll say it is just suspending my own judgments that I learned to have just about that authentic expression, its likes, its dislikes, how it likes to present, how it likes to spend its time, all of those things, like just seeing the judgments that I've still had where I'm basically like, no, you're not allowed. No, you're not okay. No, it's not safe. Like seeing any of those protective barriers. And I understand why the protective barriers served for a certain period of time, but now they're all really coming to the surface in a way where it's like, the opportunity is like, yeah, do you really need this? Do you really still need this protective mechanism? Like, is it time where you're just willing to like lay it down now? Because essentially you're still just, if you're still playing it out, it's like, it's carrying the past with me to some degree. It's like, oh, the whole reason I built this mechanism was about a previous period of time. And if I'm still playing it out, it's like I'm bringing that whole chapter with me when that chapter no longer exists. And so, yeah, there's been a lot for me I've had the opportunity just to see a lot, question a lot. And like you said, I do a lot of inner contemplation where I just, I sit with things, I ask the questions so that I can see again the obstacles that are still presenting now, so that I can consciously begin to let go and decide that it's okay to feel safe now in all these different ways. And I know I'm not I'm now being a little bit vague, big picture, but that's just the way that it felt best to talk about it right now. Uh, I have something else, but maybe it'll come back to me. But for this moment,
so the thing is that until you come into your awakening or an awareness that there is a gap between who you're being and who you want to be in the world, the understanding that anyone that is operating solely from their egoic structure is a 5-year-old. And I don't mean any like judgment, or I'm not looking down upon other adults, but if you look at it through that lens and then begin to watch the people that you have contact with, or even just people in the public, you start to really understand why their behavior is what it is, because the 5-year-old decided. It could be a 55-year-old man or, a 60-year-old woman, whatever, that has lived life and done a lot of adulting. But if you watch their behavior and their responses and reactions to their reality, you can see that it's their 5-year-old self.
Well, the distinction that I just want to point out there is that, yeah, there's been a lot of, quote unquote, adulting, as we call it. And there's been so much suppression, so much like, that's not allowed. I'm not allowed to like that. I'm not allowed to express that. I'm not allowed to do whatever. There's been so much that's been like tucked away and said, you're not allowed. Because like you said, the 5 or the 7-year-old, whatever it was, said, this isn't safe. The other thing, man, I love the way you just put that right now. Like, I don't think I've ever really, man, just the way you put it was so concise. You said the difference, I mean, this is the way it landed for me. So I'm paraphrasing what you said a little bit. The difference between who you are now and who you want to be in the world. Because I feel like anyone who's on this conscious path has at least an inkling of who they really want to be in the world. Probably ties back to a dream or something, but at least has an inkling of who they really want to be. So again, the way it landed for me is the difference between who you are now and that which you really want to be in the world, which for me, I know what that is for me. The difference between those two, those are all of the, what's the word that I want to call it? Those are all the safety mechanisms, the suppressions, the repressions, the putting it away in a drawer, tucking it under the bed. It's all those things that are essentially in between all of the rules, the I'm not allowed to, the what would people think, the I'll lose love if I, it's all of those things that basically are in the, that exist between who we are now and who we truly want to be. When you said it, I was just like, man, that's like the most concise way I've ever heard it put.
And it doesn't have to be like in totality of who you want to be, but think of it from, well, who I am today shows up differently than who I want to be, because I want to be more patient. I want to be more expansive. I want to feel more free. I want to be more creative. Like, it doesn't need to be this whole another creation, because that would probably have a whole lot of ego embedded in it. But if you just looked at it from that perspective that, geez, this is who I am right now, and I want to be more loving. I want to be more compassionate. I want to be less judgmental of myself and others, whatever that might be. Understand that the gap is just an aspect of you that was created at some point in order to get you through something. And the only way to step forward through this process that we are going through, this ascension, is to give every single one of your aspects a seat at the table. The judgy one, the angry one, the one that plays in lack, all of the things that sort of spiritual programming would tell you that those parts aren't allowed, that those are your dark shadow, dirty parts. All of those aspects come to the table. Every one of them. You get to come, you get to be with me, you get to have a voice. If you need to cry, I will cry for you. Whatever you need in order to feel safe so that we can dissolve this together, that's what we do.
Oh, man. Well, there was one thing I wanted to just add to something I said a minute ago, which I'll say that right now, is that yeah, for me, when I was saying I know who I want to be, what that just means for me is that I just want to be fully expressed. Like I just want to be able to express freely. Like I don't want to keep, in the beginning of the year, I called it my unhindered self. Like I'm very curious about my unhindered self, like the one that doesn't stop me and hold me back because it's going, is it safe? Is it safe? Like, will it be okay? So when I talk about when I said I know what that is for me, what that is for me is like the fully expressed, like just like, this is me. And just,
Everybody wants.
yeah.
I don't think
Um,
yours is special to you. I think that's what we all want.
well, yeah, I just wanted to define it for me, but I have heard someone else, I don't know if I'm going to remember his full name right now, but he's a pretty, his first name is John. He's a pretty like famous embodiment teacher in Los Angeles. I used to live there. If I'll probably have to look him up and maybe I'll say his name in the intro of this episode. But um, that's one of the things I saw him say in a YouTube video. He's just like, that's what we're all after. We all just want to, like, whenever we move on from this experience, we just want to be able to go, I was fully expressed.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole, like, I just want to be fully expressed. uh and so on that note, because yeah, I know that's not specific to me, I'm just very clear that's what it is for me. That's like the yearning. And I am on my way. Like I really have come so far, especially even like it's like a rapid speed lately. It's like every week it's like, man, you know, even who I am this week is far from who I was last week. So it really is like rapid speed for me as of late. But the other thing I wanted to point out is just I love the way that you also just said this was, because again, what popped out was this thing about rejection, like rejecting any part of us. So when you said making space for, the version of, let's say, the inner child that believed in scarcity, it's not pushing that version away. It's, basically saying, like, I have space for you. I love you. There's room for you at my table. I accept you. Rather than, because, based on our conversations, I have a feeling you'll probably relate, but there is just so much talk in the communities that I feel that you and I are both aware of. It's not, again, an all encompassing statement. I've just been exposed to a lot that's like, it's all about the overcoming. It's all about the getting rid of, for lack of a better phrase, like throwing it out. And what I loved about what you just said was, it's all inclusive. Like it's more like, I see that you're scared. I see that you don't trust. I'm not going to push you away and try to get rid of you. I'm going to bring you closer and show you my love, because it's like in the space of my love, that's how eventually that sense of safety and trust may come back. That's kind of how it's landing for me.
That's it, absolutely. Another really great way to look at it is like a Russian doll, the doll that's got the doll inside the doll inside the doll inside the doll. So the upper doll is the doll, your full-on ego. That's who you go out in the world as. That's maybe who you go to work as. And then there's all these other dolls that are these aspects of you that didn't receive the love, safety, and validation that they needed at any given point in your life. Got the last kid picked on the soccer team, the one that got dumped by the boy they were in love with, like whatever, right? All of those aspects that were created out of survival are all just waiting to have a seat at your table. They just need your own love in order to alchemize themselves back into wholeness with you. And then we get down to the little teeny tiny doll, and that's the inner child. That is your God spark. That is your divine self. That is your unique template that you came here to fully express as yourself. So we just have to undo all the other dolls, but it does never mean reject them, because rejection is just more separation. And that too is what we're here to dissolve.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's again, to me, so powerful, because I see so much in these communities just about, like, it's like you gotta, what's the word I want? You have to, like, overcome. You have to leave behind, like it's all of these things, and it, it's, to me, it's almost looked at as like a weakness or a problem. And therefore it's like, oh, how do I get rid of that? Whereas again, what you've brought to the table is like, no, that actually may make matters worse, because it's like this aspect is already not feeling safe, and now you're saying like, how do I get rid of you?
Exactly. It's like whatever, like getting a snag on your cuticle on your thumb and just going, well, we'll just cut the thumb off. Like, you don't do that. You don't cut away parts of yourself. Your shadow holds both your light and your dark until you bring it into, like, until you alchemize it into yourself.
Yeah.
The word shadow, because we work with linear 3D language, is divisive, and it's so like boxed in.
Yeah.
People assume that doing your shadow work means you're sitting with all your ugly thoughts and how do we cut them out and get rid of them and overcome them and stop doing the thing that created them in the first place and all of that stuff. Our light, our beauty is also a shadow aspect. It's just
Mm.
something that we haven't claimed yet.
Yeah. No, it's bringing up a few things. It's reminding me of a few things on my path, and I actually did remember that guy's name. His name is John Wineland. Um, yeah, he's the one that I heard, talking about, we all just want to be fully expressed like in our lifetime. So I remember his name, so I wanted to say it. Uh, but what you just said, it brought up a couple memories for me. Um, One, there was this method that I once learned. It's the compassion something, but it's this process of basically directly speaking to the inner child with compassionate talk. And it's actually acknowledging all of the things. So it's like, it's basically holding space and just being like, I'm so sorry that you don't trust because of this reason. I'm so sorry you think there's not enough money. I'm so sorry you don't think it's safe to do what you really love. I'm so sorry you don't believe that you'll be supported. And, it's like compassionate talk. And I really liked that method. And, just I heard other people going through that process. And, after going through it, they would just be like, oh my gosh, there's so much relief. It's like, I feel like this part of me has really been heard. Again, it's like the compassion something, the compassion key or something like that. So I remember how impactful that was when I was observing that method. And then there was one time where I actually brought through, like through my own, divine channel, was it was a metaphor. And it was just like, and I was in a group at the time, a group that understands all the things we're talking about. And basically it came through as like, if you saw a child in the corner and they were scared and they're like, balled up and they're crying and they're terrified, the offering was like, would you judge that child? Would you tell them to knock it off? Like, would you make them a problem? This was like the point. I'm just elaborating on the point. It was like, how would you talk to that child? And for me, the answer was like, well, I'd be compassionate. I'd be like, what's wrong? Like, tell me about it. I would be like, how can I soothe you? Uh, what do you need to hear? Do you want a hug? Like, that's the way I would handle it. And again, I just feel it ties into what you're saying, because it's not the rejection. Again, I say this a lot on my platforms. It's like, because to me, it's like, there's not the way, there's not absolutes. Like, we're talking about our experiences and what works for us, and we're sharing that. So I just want people to be clear when I'm not talking absolutes. I'm just saying, like, this is how it lands for me. This is what's worked for me and is working for me. So again, I'll say for me, it's the way it's landing again, because I've seen this before, is it's not the throwing it away. It's not the pushing those versions away. It's not the judging and berating. It's essentially, what do you need to hear from me so that you start to feel safe again?
Yeah, that's it exactly. That's it exactly. And getting to, so the challenge or the struggle that people have, just I know from doing sessions, is that conceptually everybody understands what we've talked about today until it starts knocking on their own door.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know, like whatever, I'm fighting with my kids all the time, or my boss triggers me every day, or blah, blah, blah. And then you start asking the questions, well, why? Well, what part of you is annoyed? Well, why does that annoy you? Well, what does it do to make, like, how does it make you feel? So getting to the figuring out which aspect of me is acting up at the moment, I'm going to give you a couple of things that I've learned. Number one, the inner child speaks to you through your nervous system. So if your nervous system is dysregulated, overstimulated, overdone from your life, from reality in general, that tells you that you're not tall enough, skinny enough, you're never going to have enough, there isn't enough for you to have enough, all of those things, the inundation of programming that we receive, but then your experiences as well, it's all embedded in your nervous system. And your nervous system is the gatekeeper of what's allowed to come in and come out of the body. And we're really clearing the body at a cellular level. That's what we're really talking about here. So understanding that it may not be that you lose your temper over something or fall into a puddle of tears over something else. It may not be so overtly played out in your reality for you to see that something is looking for your attention. It could just be a wobble in your nervous system. It could just be, wow, I'm feeling a little out of breath. I'm feeling a little sped up. I'm feeling a little or a lot not safe right now. And then you just keep unpacking. Well, what is this about that makes me feel not safe? Is it true that this environment is causing the not safe, or is it my perception of it because I have this thing from childhood or whatever? So know that it speaks to you through your nervous system. The other way to look at this is to hold in your knowingness that you are always new. That the you I spoke to a couple of days ago and the me that, they're gone, and now we're new again, and we're going to be new again every now moment. So our consciousness is new and we are new. So when there's a piece of us that is showing up that we've observed, ask yourself, who is it that's having the problem here? Like if I'm new, I'm the awake and aware conscious one, but I'm also aware that there's another aspect of me that's acting up, playing up, angry, upset, triggered, whatever. Then who is it? Who is it within me that is playing out or looking to drive the bus in this moment? So those are kind of two ways to sort of stop and question yourself. Is it my nervous system, or is it a response or a reaction to something? And then start unpacking it from there.
Yeah, no, I love that, because yeah, the everyday moments to me is where all of this embodiment, all the opportunities for embodiment are. Because again, yeah, we can talk about it, we can listen and say that makes sense, and then it's the everyday moments that's where the opportunities for embodiment truly exist. And yeah, no, I mean, I totally see that. I still see how my nervous system is assessing environments. It makes so much sense. It's assessing the environment, it's assessing people, and just like checking it all out, when there's physical things present. But then also, so for instance, yesterday, I definitely had an episode where my nervous system was feeling very unsteady. And, like you said, it was, I'm asking like, what's this about? And, it's like some of the common themes that still show up for me. It's like they're not there all the time, but they can have their moments still, is what we talked about earlier, the perfectionism. Like there's that question that hangs over me, like, am I getting it right? And if a version of my inner child feels like it's not doing the whole life game right, it may feel like, like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen because I'm not getting it right, like. And so it's just, yeah, that's what I was doing. It's like, what is this about? Why am I feeling this way? Like, what's the uncertainty? What's the fear? And yeah, then for me, it was just about being with those. And like you said, I was like, you know, what is being, what are my opportunities here to like take care of myself, and to, like, again, just to start to move in a better feeling direction, not pushing that away, but just being like, okay, I know what this is about. So like, how do I take care of me so I can start to feel better? And that's what I did. And I would say by, like that was really hitting me probably around 4 o'clock yesterday. And it probably lasted, probably till like the 7 o'clock hour. But when I really started implementing, like what do I need to do to take care of myself, I would say by 8 o'clock, I was just like completely on the other end of the spectrum. I was back to like I had music on, I was exercising, and I was just like, whoa, everything's great.
Good. Good. What a great example that you shared. Like that is a great example of being present with what is and navigating from there. And the answer isn't always the same answer every time you feel that way. Sometimes it's going to be go for a walk or go to bed, or like, like it's a different answer depending on how it's presenting and what you have in your cup to give yourself back, right? Like that's part of it
Yeah.
too. The other interesting piece is, with this whole nervous system and the energy, and particularly what showed up yesterday, but we don't need to timestamp yesterday. There's always going to be a yesterday where the energies were really intense. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter in the context of this conversation that as much as I'm a real advocate for pay attention to the story that's being told, there's gold in that. What is actually being played out when you feel panicked or anxious or, whatever, little sped up in your body? What's the story? And then unpack from there. But here's the other piece, is that when the energies are asking to engage with your body, the ascension energies, whether it's an immeasurable or if there's been solar activity or whatever, when it comes into the body, it's light and its frequency is higher than your frequency, because that's the point, right? It's working with you to help you ascend. So the spin of it coming in through your field and into your body activates the nervous system. And then the nervous system being activated then sends a signal up to the brain that says, there's something going on in the body. Is there a bear? Am I like, what's happening? What do I have to do to keep you safe in this moment? So that's another layer of the awareness in the whole know thyself intimately piece and take care of yourself intimately, is to know the difference that when you feel that activation, that anxiety, the panic, whatever playing out in your body, and then go through all the things, right? Is it real? Is it true? Is it my inner child? Or is it just the energies are asking to engage with me in this now moment? And my mind is spinning out stories of all the reasons why it's not safe for me to be me in this reality.
Yeah.
So that you can meet it, sometimes it's an outside coming in stimulant, and sometimes it's an asking from within you to be with something. So you have to kind of get good at figuring that out. And that's an on the fly thing too.
Yeah, no, very true. And very true in my experience as well. And one of the things that I really liked about what you just said is just, like the higher frequency, because what that really popped or sparked for me in that moment was, because I've definitely been aware of this in my experience with everything I've been through, but then again, I see it talked about. So for instance, I've just read about it in this book called Letting Go by David Hawkins. And it's this notion that some of the things that we may actually be very well resisting are, these higher frequency states and how good they feel. Because, of all the things, like you're not allowed to feel good unless, or you can only feel good when, all these rules that basically we then self-impose as like governing mechanisms. Well, like I can't feel good just because, I mean, like, I haven't won an award, I haven't got a promotion, I haven't won the lottery, so like, I can't just feel amazing just because. It's like, all of these, and I'm speaking in a bit of an absolute, but it's just an example that there's a lot of these things that were told to us that then became self-governing mechanisms. And like I've had experience in what I would call states that take my breath away, and they are like, it's like ecstatic bliss, ecstatic bliss, and it is just in the being, in the moment. And so I'm just offering that there may actually be resistance at times to like, and how good am I willing to allow myself to feel? And just for existing, there is no reason. It's just that like you said, your cells are opening up to more light, more energy, which, based on my understanding, takes us to higher states, which takes us to radiance, which takes us to ecstasy, just for being, for existing. And so, because these higher frequencies are coming in at times, what I'm just presenting is, for anyone who's listening or watching, is just like, just pay attention. Like, is there any resistance? Because there has been for me. I've seen part of what yesterday was about was that I was feeling amazing based on some things that I created and expressed. And then my logical mind came in, and it was just like, are you allowed to feel this good? Like, there's no award to show off for what you did today. Like, so like, are you really allowed to feel this good? So I'm presenting it because I see it for me. Um, and so just like be aware, like, because sometimes, again, this increased influx of light, does want to take us, like I have had other times where like it was just complete bliss and I was able to fully allow it. And it was just like incredible, and it lasted for hours. And I was like, this is amazing. So I would just offer, like, just notice, if if anything we're talking about is important, just notice if at times there may be resistance to allowing yourself to feel amazing. And there's no given reason. It's to me more of existence in its natural state presenting itself. And are there any, yeah, is there resistance to that, I guess, is what I'm offering. Just, something to be aware of.
Yeah. And the spiritual community has become just as messy and loud and distorted as the inverted 3D matrix that we're dissolving every now moment, right? What you're saying is so true that, it particularly now, and again, now or now a month from now, whenever you're watching or taking in this content, the state of the world is a mess right now in varying degrees. And it's not that we bypass into unicorns and lollipop land where we're like, oh, this isn't happening. We have awareness as the one consciousness that is here, that there is trouble and non-happiness, non-joy, non-connection that's happening and playing out in various ways on the planet. But it doesn't serve any part of anyone for you to hold yourself back in some kind of distorted idea of what empathy is. It doesn't serve any level. As a matter of fact, it serves what we're leaving more than it serves where we're going. So that whole piece that you were talking about is so important, just to highlight that a little bit more around how can I be? Am I worthy of? Is it okay for me to feel elated, expansive, free, happy, in joy, when I'm also aware that the harsh duality of its opposite also is existing right now? And yes, 100%, because that is what serves. Right? One by one drop of water at a time, we're getting through this, and we are dissolving what no longer serves everyone. But we have to be able to be willing and give self permission and honor thyself enough to say, I'm aware that there are parts of me, parts of the oneness, parts of the world that aren't in a good place right now. But if this is what's presenting for me in this now moment, I am going to devour it, because my frequency is what speaks.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah, frequency is it's the most important thing, what we're allowing or disallowing. And this cool image came into mind as you were just it came into my mind as you were just speaking. And it's like this picture I saw, as like a kind of like a tall, more like slender picture, but it's water. And the water inside is very cloudy, very murky, could even say like dark cloudy. and it has the potential to be clear, see through, just like radiant. It has that potential, and only each water particle can decide for itself if it's going to allow itself to be cleared out so it can experience its true potential. And if all the particles decide for themselves, and it doesn't all have to happen at once, but if bit by bit, like particles are saying, I'm going to let myself, return to my full potential. I'm going to let myself, become see-through and let light penetrate me in a really beautiful way. I'm going to do that for me. And then other particles are like, yeah, I think that feels good for me too. It's like bit by bit throughout the natural progression, that whole picture can become its full potential again. But it's through each particle going, I think I'm ready for my full potential again.
Yeah, exactly. Just allowing it, right? You don't have to go get it. You don't have to chase it down. Just allow it. That was really good. That's a really good visual. I think the other thing that came to me there that I wanted to share, it's pure just wisdom. When the energies present and they come into your field and they're light and they're spinning faster, higher vibration than you are, there is an elation that can happen temporarily. And that's the part I want to speak to, is that as the light comes in, it sits in your field and there's this, oh, this is it. This is, I'm ascending. This is amazing. I feel euphoric, right? And then usually within 36 to 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, you have a day where you're like, oh my God, I hate myself. I hate the world. I hate my parents. I hate my kids. Like, I hate my body. Everything's crunchy. Everything hurts. And then there's the potentiality at that point to go, what did I do wrong? I know the day before yesterday, I was walking on sunshine all day. And now I'm just a grumble guts about everything. And they're really like, this is where you really have to be gentle with yourself, because that is the light doing the work when you get into that crunchy space. And it is about a 3-day window. So if we have, an X flare or, whatever, solar storms that come in, sometimes you can be in a place where it's like, oh, this feels amazing. And then the mind goes to work and goes, it's because I'm spiritualing so good. I'm doing such a good job at this. This is me. I'm ascending now. Here we go. And then like 2 days later, you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Because now I feel like crap. But it's the feeling like crap that means what's happened is the light has come in. It's opened up your cells. It's spun out all the guck, all the programming, the wounds, the traumas, the stories, the experiences that no longer need to be held in the body. It's when the work is actually happening. But take it from someone who's been there and done that a few times, it's so easy to fall into judgment, into self-judgment and victimhood sometimes, self-pity. Oh gosh, yeah, I've been all those places. And sometimes I still do, where you're just like, what did I do wrong? And it's not that you've done anything wrong at all.
No, I mean, I can relate to that from my own experience as well. And what was coming to me is, it's the way it was landing was it's illumination, right? It's like, yeah, it feels so good as I first absorb it, because I've had those experiences too. It feels so good to be in the receiving of it. And then that to me is why we're seeing all the things that we're seeing. We're seeing like patterns that maybe it hasn't been on our fully conscious radar because there just wasn't space for it. But now we're seeing it more clearly because there's more illumination. As more light comes in, as more light enters into a room, you can see more details. So as more light enters us, like we're aware of more details. And again, like, it's up to us, like we're able to see patterns, behaviors, way of thinking, attitudes. And in the seeing, it's like, then we have that choice. It's like, okay, I see this for what it is. And like you said, it can take sometimes multiple experiences to get really clear. But at some point, like there is, for me, again, this clear seeing. And then there's a choice. It's like, okay, I really see this pattern for what it is now. Do I want to keep playing that out? And you used this word in one of our conversations the other day, to me, it comes down to, or am I willing to be courageous enough to make new choices as life unfolds, as more now moments unfold? Am I willing to be courageous enough to make choices that go beyond this pattern? Which for me, it's been an ongoing, like, am I safe to be seen this way and that way? Am I safe to express my voice in this way and that way? Those are just a couple things, but it's like, to me, that's the opportunity I see. With more illumination, there's more seeing. With more seeing, to me, there's more choice points. And it's in those choice points, to me, where different outcomes, maybe outcomes that we've been hoping for a long time, like those outcomes have more chance and probability now in our increased capacity to choose and to choose differently. And the way I'll say it for me is to choose more courageously, if that makes sense.
Courageously and consciously, because each choice is another timeline.
Yeah.
Right? They're all stand out in front of you. Which one are you going to choose? And
Yep.
it all depends on how conscious you are, how clear you are, and how courageous you are to choose something different. And sometimes sometimes the courageous choice point is to courageously sit with your stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like to sit in your own darkness with yourself and hold yourself and listen to your inner child and have the good cry and journal about what it is that's coming up for you in that moment. It isn't all about, well, I'm looking for more abundance in my life, so every time something comes up, I'm going to just always choose that.
Yeah.
Because that's where the spiritual bypassing piece comes in. Yes, there may be times where that's the courageous choice, but the courage really is to sit in your own darkness with yourself.
Mm. And what you were just bringing up again for me too was just the courageous choice may be the compassion. It's the compassionate choice. And I also think, I also feel what you just said is really powerful too, because a lot of times when we understand, I'm saying we, but again, I'm speaking from my experience, so that's something I'm catching more when I when I speak beyond myself. uh so like, what I really like about what you just said is, for me, there's a lot of these, principles that do come to more of the forefront of awareness on this path again, that abundance is the true nature of everything. That's what's true, that's what's real, that's what exists. But then comes that perfectionistic part of me. It's like, okay, well, now I need to choose that in every moment.
Yeah.
And then, if you have a moment where of, let's say, an expanded potential or the higher potential, I'll say some adjectives there, um it, but for some reason in that moment you're just like, oh, but like, it's just, I'm gonna choose the safe one, the one that feels safe this time. It's like, again, to me, like, it's not about just because you understand, let's say, I'll call it, like, I was going to say advanced, but it's just more of a natural way of being. It is our natural state. We're becoming more and more aware of our natural state. But just because we're aware of it, we're more and more aware of it, doesn't mean that we're going to perfectly embody it every single time going forward, just because we have that awareness. And so what I was getting is, if there is a moment where, like, maybe you are aware of, a universal truth, or just the more natural choice based on our natural state of being, but just in that moment, just like, there's a party that's like, no, I need to take the safer option in this moment. It's like, okay, well, in that moment, if that's the choice, you can go into judgment or you can have compassion. And what I'm seeing for me is just like, okay, I get it. Like, you're not there yet. You don't have, you want to have the trust, but you don't quite have it in this moment. And so, like, as we talked about earlier, let me just hold you closer. Let me just give you more compassion, rather than being like, you've still got work to do.
Yeah. Because that's the key. That, like,
Yeah.
the consciousness in which you make the decisions is more important than the decision that gets made.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
when you fall off the wagon, or you don't necessarily make the most highest choice, but you do it from a place of full acceptance and awareness of where you're at. Like, I know that I should do ABC, but man, the energies have been harsh and I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. So I'm going to make a decision that's sort of somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to love myself for it. And I'm not going to judge it. And I'm not going to tell myself that I'm screwing up my ascension process because I chose B instead of C. It's the consciousness in which you do it that makes all the difference.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Oh, yeah, to me, the theme that's standing out based on our conversation as a whole is compassion. You know, it's just like, it's the compassion in all of it, because you know, it is, even though that for those of us that can relate to trying to be the perfect student, even though the perfect student wants to be getting so-called A's all the time, this process is not exactly linear, and it can be, you know, tipsy-turvy. It can be back and forth. You know, I heard someone the other day say sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 5 steps back, you know. It's like, and so it's like, to me, what can really make all of it a little bit, you know, a little bit or even a lot better is just, you know, the compassion through all of it. Because the mind may say, I should be here, you know, I should have mastered this by now. Because, you know, again, if you went through Western education, there's probably some degree in there that, you know, wants to be a good student on some level. And so it's like, it's just seeing like how maybe the mind is like, I should have this mastered, or I should be further along. But it's like we've been talking about, and things are where they are. So like, can you find the compassion in the midst of all of it? I just glanced at my clock and it was 2:22 when I like ended that point. So I
Everybody,
think that's what I'm going to take away. What
yeah,
was that?
I said, everybody pay attention. What he just said
Yeah.
there.
Well, 2:22 for me has always, the meaning it's always carried for me is right place, right time. And so I just like glanced over. It was like 2:22. Then literally right after I glanced and saw it, it changed to 2:23. But that's what I was going to say, is that's what I'm going to take from this conversation is just even more compassion in the midst of all of it, because it's not going to be perfect in the sense that we were all taught, you know, perfect looks like. So it's just like, can we keep bringing back the compassion? And as you know, have brought to the table, for all of it, like for all the parts, all the pieces. Um, so, well, in a moment, I'll give you an opportunity just to share any of your final sentiments. But before I do that, just wanted to give you the opportunity, if people have felt resonance with you through this conversation and they just want to know more, feel free just to share, how people could find you or connect with you beyond this conversation.
Sure. The easiest way to do it is sheilahill.ca. I'm in Canada, but my clients are all over the world: Australia, New Zealand, Europe, the United States, and Canada, of course. I do one-on-one sessions, typically on short notice. And I know that that can grind against some of our third dimensional programming, but here's the thing. I live in the now moment as much as possible, in a flow state. As I say, doing my own work and being present and honoring of my own ascension journey is what I model. So the knockoff effect to that is, if you're deep in something and you really do feel you need to reach out for support, I can see you within 24 to 48 hours. You don't have to wait 3 weeks or 3 months to see me. So it's good both ways, right? I have a Patreon group that's very inexpensive. We meet 4 times a month and we just talk about this stuff that we've talked about today. We talk about what's in the energies, what's forecasted that's coming, and then whatever anybody else wants to share that they want some guidance and support and feedback on. Find me on Facebook and on TikTok. And it's all just my name, Sheila Hill. So there's lots of ways to find me if you want to ask me a question or something.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll make sure, you know, all the relevant links are in the show notes, so it'll be easy for people to find. So yeah, great to be aware of all those potentials and opportunities to connect with you further if anyone is feeling that. So yeah, just any final sentiments that you might like to share just based on everything we've talked about? Any parting words, if you will?
This may not be the most profound wisdom that I have to offer, but it's sort of what's top of mind right now. There are a lot of people that are really struggling with what's presenting in the energies, whether it's with physical ascension symptoms or being emotional or being triggered and reactive in their world. And they're asking the question, when is this going to stop? When is this going to slow down? When is this not going to feel like this? You know, I've had to take today off work because I'm a disaster. When am I going to be able to resume my regular scheduled life? And with all compassion and love, the answer is you're not. It's not going to back off. It's not going to necessarily get easier in the way that it's presenting, but your calling, your mastery in honoring the reason your soul came here comes in how you choose to meet the energies that are working with you and the wounds and traumas and stories and programs that are asking to leave. That's your work. It's not, when is this going to stop coming in and stop aggravating my world and my body? It's flipping that inversion and saying, how can I best meet myself first and foremost? And then how can I meet these energies that are activating within me to bring my soul online? So it's a little bit of a harsh truth, but an important message to get out is, how do I meet it better?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I zoomed out big picture as you were describing that. And what was, again, coming in for me was one, again, I love that you're talking about just, the question, like, how are you meeting it all? Because we've talked a lot about compassion in this conversation. So again, it's like, I feel like it's just another opportunity for all the compassion we've spoken of, but also too, like, in where I feel that it's all headed. And of course, there's no end to creation. Creation is always going to its next version. And as you and I know, there's like millions of potentials to how creation may express itself next. So it's always becoming, it's always becoming, it's always becoming. But the closest thing that I feel that I can point to as to what I feel, what I personally feel that we have to look forward to is where this is all going. Again, it's not ever stopped. We never fully arrive, but where I see this going for all of us, especially all of us that are choosing to allow our own unfoldment is the return to our natural state and living that here on earth, like getting to have that experience of our natural state, or at least a lot more of it for any amount of time that we're still here. And so thank you for saying what you said. And then what was just chiming in for me was, and just remember that though it can feel complicated and messy, not easy at times, because I'll raise my hand, there's times where I'm just like, this is not easy today.
Yep.
Like, this does not feel easy right now. It didn't feel easy yesterday at 4 o'clock. But just remember that, and this is just something I've heard several times, it's something that's often said, I think, when you're comparing the third dimension and the fifth dimension, and it's like, you don't get to experience, because it's an experience, it's an energetic life experience. You don't get to experience what it feels like, in the fifth dimension of consciousness, and get to bring all of the 3D stuff that doesn't serve you with you. It's like, that's not how it works. It's the letting go, it's the undoing. Then we get to really experience that, because we were willing to let go. We were willing to say, like, okay, you served me for a time, but I don't need to keep carrying this pattern or whatever it is with me. Then we get to experience that, because the two just don't mesh.
Yeah. Well, it's two harmonics, right?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought that clarity through. And I know you're trying to wrap this up, but Ascension won't always be hard. What I said is true. How can you best put the energies
Yeah.
in yourself? It
Yeah.
won't always be hard. You'll reach a point where it won't matter what the energies are doing or not doing. It's
Yeah.
that we're cleaning out our backlog. We're
Yeah.
cleaning out all of the stuff that's been held in the body from not
Yeah.
just this lifetime, but from all lifetimes and expressions.
Yeah.
So be patient, be
Yeah.
courageous, and be compassionate.
Yeah. There you have it. Be compassionate. So I'll leave it there as the recurring theme of this conversation. So, well, thank you so much. This has been an honor to have you, to have this conversation with you. Again, I've learned of even more things that we have in common. So it's just continues to be more cool. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and connecting and being patient with my timing and all of that stuff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's all been, couldn't have imagined it any other way. Just let it flow. And now here we are. And it's been great. So I'm sure the journey continues to unfold in cool ways from here. But for now, it's been amazing. And yeah, just thankful to know you in this journey of unfolding.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Take care. Much love to you.
Thank you so much. And back to you. I was just thinking, a lot of times I'll say things at the end of the interview,